Tell me when it's live. Are we live? All right, good afternoon, everyone. Afternoon to the CCMA family, the governing body of the CCMA, the executive committee of the CCMA, the extended management or senior management of the CCMA, and our commissioners, our interpreters, our association, which is the staff association of the CCMA, and including, of course, our case management officers and our cleaners. This is a very interesting time because this is a second session that we are holding after the first one that we had. And I hope that this session, as we start it moving forward, it will be as beneficial as the previous one. And like we said previously, this session is intended to be an educational one and also sharing of information. And for us, the most interactive session we can have to make sure that we keep in touch with our users and also try to find ways to deal with the questions that you normally ask. And as we have promised that we will do so. And what is very important to note how this process has run is that we did our own scan where we have navigated through our website, our Twitter, so as to see the kind of questions that you ask, so that when we respond to those questions, we're answering questions that you are asking, not speculated questions. And very interestingly, that most of that information that we are responding to are things that we are keen to share, because this is the only platform where we can share with you what is happening in the CCMA on matters that are of interest to you. And this process, therefore, is taking that approach because it is based on those submissions that you made. And the way we have structured this session, we said it's going to be a session that we hold every month. And I'm very happy to just say that as I'm sitting here, I'm sitting in the second session, and in the month after we did the previous one, at least in as far as that part is concerned, we have kept our promise. And I can promise you that moving forward, we're going to continue to hold this session every month like we have promised. And I hope you find that very useful and you find it very interactive. And it will also attempt to answer some of the questions that you're going to get. You will also note that in the responses that we give, we have deliberately avoided to answer questions that has to do with the UIF or any other institution where we as the CCMA have no jurisdiction. But I can confirm to you, as you will see in the submission that we're making, that what we have raised in the previous session, that we're going to have an integrated approach on how we deal with these issues or your matters. You will appreciate what we are doing and what we hope to be doing, that we do indeed listen to what you say, and we're trying to make sure that the things that we do, even if it's not within our competence, but we take steps to make sure that you get assisted. Because at the end of the day, the CCMA and all these institutions, they exist purely at your service. It's called service delivery. It is very sad that as we open this session and after the presidential address, that the president has noted two important pandemics. The first one, it has to do with COVID-19, and the second one is the GBV, or the gender-based violence. What we are clear about the CCMA is that we also join the call with the president that we denounce and we detest any form of violence, particularly the violence that is propagated or done or inflicted against gender, particularly our women. Some of the cases that we read are very horrific, And we hope that we will all join this call with the President to make sure that the perpetrators of such action are brought to book. And the CCMA, as an institution of statutory creation, we are also expected to deal with cases of harassment and cases of sexual harassment. And I'm sure that in instances where it is shown that people have committed these heinous crimes, that the commissioners in dealing with the matters will do the right thing, because that is the call that the President has made. So that's where the CCMA stands in as far as the GBV issues are concerned. And secondly, I will be announcing also, you may have read in some of them, that the CCMA is also a member of the society. So as an institution, especially that we deal with the members of the public, we are always liable to be affected and infected by COVID-19. And as a start, I would like to share with you what has transpired since the last time. We found ourselves in a very unfortunate situation where our Rustenburg office had to be closed on the 17th of June because there was a reported case of an employee who was infected by COVID-19. We went and deep cleansed the office, continued with all protocols that needs to be observed when there's a reported case of that nature, as a result of which the offices were closed on the 17th of June, but the offices were reopened on the 19th of June 2020. There was also, and I would say that very much unexpected, that there was, in fact, the Cape Town office, which was also affected by COVID-19, and the office was closed on the 11th of June 2020 and reopened on the 17th of June 2020. The same happens with our Tshwane office, which closed on the 7th of June and also reopened on the 19th of June. Our East London office was also affected. We closed the office on the 8th of June 2020 and then reopened on the 15th of June. And lastly, it is our Klerksdorp office, which closed on the 19th of June, and we have not reopened the office as a result of that. It is important, therefore, to note that while that is happening, the capacity in our offices is not running at full steam yet. We are not at 100% yet. And this is in terms of the regulations, despite the fact that the CCMA is engulfed in these referrals and large numbers of referrals. Despite all of that, we're not complaining. We have done our best and our staff is acting with pride and has delivered despite the limited capacity that we have as the Commission. And this has also amounted to some of our processes normally that will run faster. It was not running faster because we are not running at full capacity. And what is also very important to note is what I call the Rule 24 issues. You would have noted that at this stage, even after the presidential pronouncement that it did 2 days ago or so, that the provincial borders have not been relaxed yet. As a result of that, the movement of persons between provinces is still limited. But one of the things that normally happens at the CCMA is when there is a matter that has occurred in one province, and then you find that parties travel to other provinces, and then we receive applications in terms of Rule 24 that the matter must be held in the province where the matter occurred. Now, due to COVID-19 and because of these provincial limitations that we have, I can say with pride that some of those matters that we did through web-based hearing has been very helpful, because in such circumstances, we're able to reach out to all the parties without necessarily have to drive or fly between provinces. As a result of that, we have not received a lot of Rule 24 applications because this alternative means of doing things has contributed quite positively in that regard. And I must also add, and I must say this with pride, you may have noted that the CCMA Facebook is alive, but we have launched digital platforms. And I've seen in the social media that it has been properly announced in terms of our new platforms. We have introduced the digital referral form, which is done specifically in order to accommodate that. And I note also the question from Michael Atkins asking, how do we submit these applications? You go to the app and then you follow the prompts after that. And you can also go to our website and follow the same process. We have created that app and the digital referral forms in order for us to find it easy to use that process. The benefit of this process is that you don't have to come to the CCMA offices. You don't have to queue at the internet shops to find a fax machine or to find an email in order for you to serve and file a 711 or any other referral form, which is a CCMA process form. So we are going digital. This is not only in terms of improvement of access and also to ensure that our people do not get exposed to COVID-19 by traveling in buses and taxis. This is something that you can do from the comfort of your home or from the comfort of your office. We are very proud that this process is able to do so. Not only is it about the referral of the 711, which institutes the process, but it is also about creating the platform so that when you want to refer an enforcement process or to initiate an enforcement process in terms of our 718 forms, you are able to do so without leaving your home. And once you've clicked that button, the CCMA excellent staff will take it over from there, and then the process will run. And what is also important to note and what we wish to announce after discussing with my dispute resolution department, that when it comes to the turnaround times, these platforms are going to assist us to improve in terms of the allocation of matters and also the issuing of dates. You would have noted that those that walk into our offices, it takes less than 48 hours for you to get your case number and the matter to be set down. Sometimes you get it immediately because you are at the office. That is the kind of efficiency that we want to implement as the CCMA. And in that process of doing so, we then noted that it's not everybody who has access to that. It's not everybody who is that sophisticated. We then took a decision that we must expand our reach and our partnership so that we can bring the CCMA closer to the people. One of the challenges that we normally have is having to reach people who are in the outlying areas of our country. And then we took a decision, also having regard to the fiscus being under strain, that the partnerships that we have, we must be able to utilize them for them to be able to allow us and allow our users to use them. To name a few, we have, obviously, as you know, that the Department of Employment and Labor, it is a parent of the public entity called the CCMA. The plan now, and as endorsed and supported by the Director General of the department, that we are now going to start to use fully the offices of the department for purpose of referral and for the purpose of the hearings. We will make the announcement very soon on the commencement date of using those offices for the purposes of hearing and for the purpose of access. The Department of Employment and Labor has far more better reach than the CCMA, even in areas where we do not have offices. We therefore are of the opinion that it will be in the best interest of the CCMA and also the department that we use the state resources optimally instead of us creating leases and also paying monies on issues that we ought not to be paying for. So we'll be using those offices. In addition to that, we also want to use our sister entities such as the UIF offices, that when you go to UIF, if you've got an issue with regards to payment and issues relating to that, the UIF will be there to assist you. But if it's a matter that spills over to the CCMA or vice versa, the CCMA will be in that building. So we want to be in those buildings to be able to refer cases, to use our digital platform while you are at that particular place, and also to be able to have those places used for purpose of hearing. There isn't much that we need for the hearing. You need the commissioner, you need an interpreter, you need a case management officer. Then the matter can proceed. And we also agreed with the public protector's offices that we're also going to use their offices as well if it's necessary. And we've got an agreement to that. We've also agreed with the Labour Court that we can use the courts as well in order for us to extend our reach. So these proposals that I'm presenting to you have been agreed that that's what we can do. But please, before you proceed to those offices to do so, wait for our call and our notification. When we are ready, we shall make the announcement. I can also confirm to you that on Monday, the 22nd, I have a meeting together with the team with SALGA that has to do with the municipalities. The idea also to do so is to have this improved access, because when it comes to local government or municipalities, they have the reach that we don't have. So every municipal offices must be used as a platform for us to be able to use those offices for CCMA business. And I hope that on Monday, the meeting will come up with those outcomes where we will be able to announce to you that we are going to be able to use those offices. One of the dreams that one has had and still have is that one day we will have the CCMA cases running in the townships as well, because we've never had that in the history of the CCMA. With this partnership approach that we have taken, we believe that that dream is now realizable, because we can use the municipal offices that are in the township. When we look at our caseload, the bigger number of people who refer cases come from those areas. There's nothing in law or practice that prevents us from doing so. I am looking forward to that day, that historic day, where we will be able to announce that even in the townships, without having to travel to town, that cases of the CCMA can be heard there. And with that announcement, I hope that you will join us to celebrate that milestone, which I think will be beneficial to all our users who are not sophisticated and those that are affected by the unemployment due to unfair dismissals in many of the cases that we have, that they can just walk into the venues and do cases and find a very full, furnished and equipped office to do such cases and also to refer to those cases. Johan Price is asking, I hope I'm pronouncing your surname correctly, forgive me if I don't, is asking the question, will the digital platform remain after the lockdown? The answer is yes. The reason why I'm saying so, it's not because of COVID-19. It is because we are in the time of the fourth industrial revolution. When it comes to artificial intelligence, when it comes to automated systems, this is, as they call it today, a new normal. So that's how the CCMA will be operating. So all the digital platforms that we're creating, that's how we're going to deal with them. I might as well deal with another question that we got from our Facebook and also from our website, where somebody asked the question, does the CCMA have a WhatsApp number? Not yet, but I can happily tell you that we have purchased a business package to use for users and also for our staff. So yes, we are going to be on the WhatsApp group. And when we interact with our users, we are keeping up with the time. Brittany and Pauline Liane, they are asking a question, where do you find the app? Our app, sorry. Where do we find our app? It is on our Androids, and you'll find it on iStore as well. It is available there. I apologize with the app because we've got an annual performance plan, and this one is relating to the application, which is the app. Yes, you will find that you can download it there. It is available for you to use, and I will give you some of the statistics to show you that as it is now, it has been launched on the 8th of June already. I'm talking about the digital referral forms. You can find it there. You'll also find our actual app. You'll find it also on the same software platforms where we are using those specific important products. This, in our view, we see it as a celebration because it is for the first time that the CCMA finds itself in a position where it does things like that. You can just imagine having a CCMA that has the WhatsApp, that has this app, that has the digital platform where you can refer forms, including enforcement. We've got a website, we've got our Twitter. So we are quite expanded. There is no social media platform that we're not covering at the moment. And I know that some of you may have had frustrations with regards to our website and that some of the information is outdated. We are attending to that. And once all of them are updated, I'm sure you'll have the pleasure of using any of those platforms. We look forward to a time where people will sit at work, will sit in their offices and refer cases and getting their notice of set down, getting progress on cases, be able to download to arbitration award and rulings without having to travel anywhere. This is the ideal where the CCMA is going. And we've already started with this announcement that I just made. If there's anything today that you must not forget, is exactly that we have progressed, we have advanced. Our communication and our ICT department has done very well in that regard by introducing those important platforms. Let me now proceed also to some of the other specific questions that we received before today. And this one is under the topic of the retrenchment-related issues. As a statement, I must say that it is quite disheartening and very sad if we look at the total number of the pending retrenchments that are being reported, the latest being the SAPC, and of course the other one being ADCON, talking about 22,000 people that are facing retrenchment, and SAPC talking about 600. I will take you through some of the figures that we're facing there. But there are certain specific questions that you asked, and we promised that we'll deal with those questions. Let me proceed and do so. One of our users asked a question or complained that the severance payouts are made late after the retrenchment. Yes, it does happen, depending on the process, of course. We cannot answer on the circumstances and the reasons why they delay. We must understand that if in cases where it is delayed or not done, do not despair. There is a specific dispute process that you can initiate if you are not happy with your severance pay that is paid out. And for our unsophisticated users, sometimes they talk about service money. This is actually the money that we're talking about. It's not service money, it is severance pay. There are certain circumstances where you can lose the severance pay if the employer offers you alternatives and then there is an unreasonable refusal to accept that. This process is relating to Section 41 of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. So the answer is directly, yes, it does happen sometimes. Sometimes it's process, sometimes it's because of negligence. But if you feel aggrieved at any stage, you can, of course, then refer a dispute to the CCMA in terms of Section 41 of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act to raise your issue with that. And then the allocated commissioner will deal with the matter promptly and effectively. The other question was, employers are retrenching employees due to clients pulling out of their businesses. Yes, it is possible to retrench because of that reason. We mustn't forget that when you're dealing with retrenchments, the actual proper expression for that is called, it is a dismissal due to operational requirements. That is a money-related type of dispute. It is commonly known as a no-fault dispute because this type of dismissal, it is not the fault of the employee. It is because of economic, structural, financial reasons. So if the client that is a main financial stream to an enterprise decide not to provide that business anymore, therefore the revenue stream or the financial position of the company will be affected by that. As a result of that, employees get affected and the enterprise as well. In some cases, the enterprise closes half of its operations because it doesn't have any further business. Sometimes it fully closes the operations because there's no money. And the invariable consequence of such a circumstance leads to employees losing their employment because of operational requirements. So that is the reason why that will happen if there is no money. Unless, of course, even if there is a business that is pulled out but the company is still liquid, there is no reason why employees should be dismissed. It could be different reasons, could be specialization, because it's not always relating to financial problems that leads to retrenchment. The other question that came was employees told that they will not be working after the lockdown. I guess the response that I just gave fully applies to that question as well. But that should not be done with an SMS. It should be done with a WhatsApp. There is a process that is dignified that must be followed to inform any person that they no longer have employment. And you issue proper notices and you consult properly, because we're dealing with families, not just people. It's families. So we must do it with dignity. So the consequence there is exactly the same. The other question is the retrenched employee or employee's employer proposes packages to be paid in installments. Some of you may have noted a very important judgment, which I will be discussing with the team or the commissioners on the 26th. One of the judgments that I want to discuss there, it's an AMCU judgment versus Royal Bafokeng. You will note in terms of the judgment, there's very important principles that arise from that. One of which is that when the trade unions, particularly the unions that are the most representative in the workplace, will enter into a collective agreement with the employer that in cases there are certain operational problems that leads to dismissals on operational requirements, that union must be consulted. And out of that, they agree on how the retrenchment must happen. And such agreements are also capable of being extended. In such circumstances, there are also other agreements on how payments are made. Sometimes it happens that when you have these kinds of payment where payments are made in installments, it comes as a result of that agreement. If it's not in terms of that agreement, it may have been agreed at the workplace level. If not at the workplace, it may have been agreed with the minority union. It may have been agreed with the employees directly. But there's always a reason why there is staggered payments. Without, of course, misunderstanding the nature of the dismissals we're talking about, it is financial based in the normal circumstances. If the company does not have money and expecting certain payments to be done at a later stage, it is possible that there could be an agreement that payments be done in a staggered way or in a phased process so that the company is able to meet its obligations. So it is possible. This, I'm saying in good faith, and also trusting that the enterprise or the employer that is involved is delaying payment purely for those reasons, not doing that because they want to frustrate the employees that are involved. So that is as much as we got in terms of questions on the retrenchment. As I said, the questions relating to UIF, I will not deal with them because they are the competence of the UIF. There are also specific questions that we got that relates to remuneration issues. One of them was the employers are reducing employee salaries while they're working from home. Now, in this question, I want to deal with it differently. I think it is quite comfortable not to say working from home. Let's call it remotely working or working remotely. This means that you are able to still execute your duties as an employee working from another site other than in your workplace. This may include your home. This may include a restaurant, it may include a hotel, it may even include sitting in a park. The important thing is not about where you are seated. It is about having the tools of trade and being able to deliver on the functions that you are being paid for. As a result of that, that is seen and it is in fact working. What becomes impossible is when there are certain type of functions like cleaning services, for example, like catering, for example. For those type of functions, like we have at the CCMA, we've got catering secretaries. They cannot do that function remotely. I have not seen any 4IR product that says you can clean remotely. You have to be physically at the place to be able to clean. If the functions we are talking about are functions that are capable of being performed remotely, there is no reason why that employee should not be paid their full salary. I did advise last time when I presented that the best scenario that we expect every workplace to have is to have at least a policy or a guideline on how you deal with remote working, both in the public sector and also in the private sector. So in both circumstances, you do need a regulatory environment or a regulatory document that tells you how to deal with this. And fundamental to that is that the duties must be executed, and in response to that, salaries must be paid. If you have performed your work remotely and you are not being paid a salary, or the salary is being reduced, you have to raise the matter in terms of your internal grievance processes. If you get no joy internally, then you can refer that case either to the Department of Employment and Labor, or you can refer such a dispute to the CCMA. Whichever it is, that function, if done, the employees must be paid. I did say last time that in dealing with this kind of dispute, the best way to deal with them is to be honest and to be transparent in dealing with it. We will not have some of the disputes that we receive, because some of the matters that we settle, it's a matter of sharing information. It's not much about the actual dispute. But sometimes people declare dispute because they do not know. The other question, therefore, has to do with employees who are working from home and are not paid. The employer says working from home does not apply as if you worked. I think I've dealt with that question. It's not much about where you're working from. The true test is, did I execute my function as contracted or as instructed? If the answer is yes, therefore the converse is also correct, therefore that in such circumstances, you've got to be paid. But if there's no work done, for whatever the circumstances, then there is a case to be made, not that it is a given. There is a case to be made that there may be a case of no work, no pay. But circumstances of each and every case will determine which one is the most applicable. So those two specific questions that we asked, that is the specific response that we're giving directly. There were also other questions relating to contractual issues. I must say that when it comes to contractual issues, they are always complex, because it's also a lawfulness issue and it's also a fairness issue. But let me go directly to what the question is. The question is, employers are terminating fixed-term contracts before they expire, informing employees that the new contracts will be signed after the lockdown. You see, the termination of any contract has to do with law, but you would have noted that the 2015 Labour Relations Act amendments introduced a very interesting section adding to the existing section called Section 198, capital letter B. That particular section has to do with all dispute relating to fixed-term contracts. The general principle when it comes to contracts that are signed is that the contracts must be done in accordance with what is agreed in terms of that memorandum. And secondly, that an employee must be paid in accordance with that contract. Therefore, any earlier termination of that contract, depending on circumstances, may be a case that is justiciable at the CCMA or at the Labour Court. But any termination of a contract where there is no mutual agreement on the termination of that contract, it then causes a dispute. I always say, and this I've also heard from the Judge President of the Labour Court, that it is always preferred that when you've got such dispute, that you refer such cases into the specialized forums. And in this regard, I'm referring to the CCMA and the Labour Court. So there is a case to be made and there's a case to be answered if there's a premature termination of a contract and the aggrieved party feels that the contract was terminated unfairly or unlawfully. And I'm sure that we are all now aware that there's a difference between an unfairly terminated contract and an unlawfully terminated contract. The CCMA has jurisdiction to deal with the unfairly terminated contract. So if it so happens that your contract is changed or your contract is terminated prematurely, not in terms of the agreed period because it's a fixed term contract, that case can be referred to the CCMA and the allocated commissioner will deal with the matter. What we've also noted is that the introduction of that Section 198 is not operating alone. It operates together with Section 186 of the same Labour Relations Act. And it does happen sometimes that employees are not allowed to work because a new contract has not been signed. If it happens that the contract is not signed, but the employee continues to work, there is a claim to be made there. On whether there is a successful prosecution of that case, it will depend on the evidence and the circumstances of each and every case. But generally, we must accept that any premature termination of a contract, even if it's for operational requirements, there is a likelihood that is a dispute there. But depending on the evidence and of course the outcome of the commissioner, that matter can be resolved. So the issues of contracts at the moment, what we've noticed is that some enterprises that don't have money and some of the contracts they end during the period of the lockdown, they do not want to sign the new contracts because they are waiting for the lockdown levels to be increased, like we have seen now to level 3, now advanced level 3, where certain industries are open. And they will then choose to delay the commencement of the new phase of the contract because they are avoiding the corresponding obligation of having to pay those salaries. It is not right to do things like that. And I think if we stick to the principles that I've introduced last time, that if there is disclosure of information and there is honesty and transparency in the dealings, you will not find those kinds of disputes, because we must not underestimate the knowledge and the commitment of our workers when it comes to the operational challenges that are faced by an enterprise. So to refuse to sign the contract and as a result not offering employment, you will end up with this type of dispute. And in our view, these kinds of disputes can be avoided. I therefore feel that when a contract is delayed and not signed, but there is work done, there is a duty to pay. And of course, note, of course, Section 64 also of the Labour Relations Act that deals with the unilateral change in terms and conditions of employment, that is also a justiciable process if it so happens that the terms and conditions of your contract are changed without your consent. The other question has to do with employees being forced to apply for annual or sick leave for the interim as a result of the lockdown in order to be paid their salaries. You see, one of the questions that we are hoping that will be brought by parties during our processes is that very question. There is nothing currently in the Basic Conditions of Employment Act that says that when you are on quarantine for a period of 14 days, for example, that should actually be sick leave. Because sometimes people self-quarantine because it is on suspicion that they may have contracted COVID-19. It doesn't mean that you're sick. And you cannot take such a leave as well as an annual leave, because it's not. That's not what the annual leave is about. It is also not paternal or maternal leave because no one is pregnant or someone has given birth. So you can't use COVID-19 for that purpose. So this COVID-19 14-day and any other quarantine is not classified. But the best way for us to answer these questions is for the matter to be referred so that we can make a properly thought and researched decision with regards to those type of leaves. So what we are clear about that it's not any of the leaves, unless, of course, it is associated with sickness and illness. You go to the doctor and the doctor issues a medical certificate, then it will be classified as sick leave. But you cannot impose such leave because of the circumstances under which it operates. It varies. So we will make a decision case by case on which one is applicable. That is as far as those questions are concerned. I now want to proceed to the CCMA related questions as well. I did answer the question that relates to the WhatsApp group. We're excited about that. As soon as we start that, we're going to be announcing that so that you can be able to enjoy that. There is a question coming from Siya Udungulu, no VV, and also from Zolisi Katrange. Phone is not working and no confirmation of receipt emails. It leaves us uncertain if queries are through and will be processed. Let me explain on the issues of the telephone. I can confirm to you that we took one of the very important decisions at the CCMA to decentralize our call center. As matters stand, it has been decentralized. The decentralization process did not come without problems. There are instances where some of our telephone lines were not working, and if I understood your question correctly. But now it has been resolved. When you dial our national number, the 086 1616 number, it will redirect you to the specific province where your case is located. So it is very helpful to know your case number and to know where your case is located. For example, if it is a Johannesburg case, it will say GAJB. So that will be a Johannesburg case. And in most of those cases during the transition, some of the calls did fall through. And it was very unfortunate that that has happened. But we will perfect that system. I will also make a comment about that when you're talking about the web-based rated cases, because we did see, some of you may have seen this notice or a newspaper article that had to do with the issues of the consent not be given or the problems associated with web-based and delaying of cases there. We will respond to that. Now, the other question had to do with the employees or dates or which cases will be scheduled first or whether it will be unpaid salary. We're going to follow the chronology as and when the cases came, and without necessarily picking on the specific nature of a case. So that's how we're going to do those matters. And already we're dealing with the backlog and applying our best to make sure that we clear it in terms of the cases that we've received there. So the priority is about first come, first serve. Now, let me also proceed to confirm an important principle that while we are doing that, in terms of our staff, as I said earlier on, that we're not at 100% capacity, we have used a rotational system, and which is also assisting us with regards to the employees who may have been, affected and infected by COVID-19, that will then use a fresh staff, because as we are sitting at 33% or so. So we're using a rotational system so that there will always be service. So that one is working. So we are comfortable with that. This newspaper article that deals with ground up, I'll comment about that later. Now, the other question has to do with employees are worried that cases are still postponed even beyond the lockdown period. When it comes to postponement, there'll always be postponements. There are certain postponements that are done by way of an application done by one party, but some of the postponement, as you call them, postponement, are not postponement. They are matters that are being rescheduled by the CCMA. It is because we are trying to manage the numbers. You'll find that some of the cases that were set down, they are set down later and they are rescheduled because we've got to allocate commissioners to be able to answer and be able to do those cases. So it's not necessarily a postponement. It's just a different date that is being set for that matter. And I have received confirmation and assurance from the team that there is absolute communication to all the parties that are affected on all matters that are being rescheduled by our case management officers. And there's nothing expected from you that you must do in order to have your matter set down. It is set down automatically. The only reason why we do that is because we're working with less capacity in as far as the matters are concerned. There is no other reason other than that. Then Renette Suffocate Lechwane is asking we must address the issue of the CCMA commissioners being bribed by employers or respondents. Yes, let me make this statement very clear. There is no commissioner that I know of that is corrupt. And if there's a commissioner that exists that is corrupt, and you are aware of that commissioner that is corrupt, send it to me. Send it to the director's office at ccma.org.za. And we've got also our Vuvuzela line, which is a corruption line, in cases you find that there's a commissioner who is like that. But we have seen also cases where people make such allegations that our commissioners are bribed or they're corrupt, but there's nothing presented together with that. And just to give you an example, I received an email 2 days ago from one of our George office in Cape Town. This community complained that there's somebody who is corrupt in our offices. And they listened to one of the interviews that I made, and the commitment that I made, and this is the same commitment that I'm making, that if it happens that you do have evidence to show that there's a commissioner who is bribed or there's a commissioner who's corrupt, then bring that evidence forward. We will act. And the same call that is made by the George community that says that there's this corruption and all of that, and they say that I stated in the news that we will act if there's evidence, that they do have evidence. Yes, let's receive the evidence. And I can assure you there is no single case at the CCMA that has been received against the commissioner where there was evidence of corruption that commissioner remained in our ranks. We have none. And the confidence I have in our commissioners, that they are ethical commissioners, they are acting in terms of correct moral standards, they do understand their professional obligations, that corruption is a scourge and we will not participate in it. But if we find and we present evidence that there is such an action I can promise you, like I did on Radio 702 and SAFM, that we will take action against such commissioners. Those commissioners who in the past were found to have done such type of conduct, which is despicable, we did take action and we have acted. All I'm asking, if you do have such evidence, bring it forward. I've given you also the direct line for you to do so. Sometimes parties lose cases. Sometimes commissioners make rulings against parties during the course of the proceedings. When a party, dissatisfied, leaves the hearing, they then say your commissioner is corrupt because he did not grant postponement. I know that when it comes to cases, there's always winners and there's losers. But let us lose graciously if you do lose a case. That is why the CCMA, we encourage the process of mediation and conciliation to make sure that the dispute that is referred, that we settle it and then parties both are happy, particularly on cases where, like your unfair labor practices, because the relationship of the parties continues post the dispute. So it is important that in the manner that we do resolve that matter, it must be resolved in such a way that it sustains and retains the relationship between the parties. So that is the direct response to that. We have zero tolerance when it comes to that. It's not for the first time for us to hear that. But at least, if there's a corruption case, let it be genuine. We will act genuinely in response to that. But I cannot take action against a commissioner purely on speculation and allegations that can't be substantiated, because our commissioners will be afraid to make bold and brave decisions on the matter that we bring in the hearing rooms because they are afraid of a complaint or a grievance that will be lodged against them. They must have an unfettered discretion. They must act without favor when they make decisions. But one thing that is very clear, that commissioners will also make decisions that will make you unhappy when there's a loser and a winner in a case. So we expect that it will happen. But I'm not saying that it's not happening. I'm saying that in the absence of any complaint that has evidence, I cannot say so. I will only say so once it is shown. So don't be afraid to raise those issues. We will respond to them and we will deal with them. Unozipho Bonga says, does CCMA provide a facilitator if employees feel uncertain about processes? Yes, we do. There are two main processes that we provide. Other than the training that we do, in fact, there are almost 4 processes. There is a process we call the Section 188A, which is the inquiry by arbitrator in case of a disciplinary hearing. That is also done through a referral to the CCMA, then allocated commissioner, then the matter is being dealt with. In cases of Section 189, particularly Section 189A, the large-scale dismissals, then we do provide a commissioner to facilitate such processes. And we also allocate someone who's experienced and who understand the industry and also understand the nature of the process. Sometimes we are called to implement some of our dispute management programs, and one of which is what we call the building workplace relations, workplace mediations, and stuff like that. So in such circumstances, it is relationship building type of response. And as a result of that, we are able to allocate a commissioner to assist. The main issue that we have currently is that sometimes we are unable to reach out to many of the workplaces because of budget constraints, particularly when it comes to the preventative programs that we have. Because as and when we allocate a commissioner, there's a cost associated with that. But when a case is made out and you submit a request that you need to assist and you need somebody to facilitate, we do provide a facilitator in answering Unozipho's question directly. The only limitation is from time to time, it is a budgetary limitation. I guess that answers your question. Now, there are other questions that I have to also respond to, which were sent to us. You will note that we opened our offices again for users, especially walk-ins, on the 18th of May 2020. And there's a very important information I want to share. This has to do with what I referred earlier as our web-based hearings. This is where we use Zoom, we use Skype, or we use Microsoft Teams. And in such circumstances, it does need proper Wi-Fi that is stable. It does require data to be able to sustain it. And before I even give you the specific questions and also the processes that has happened already, it is very important to remember what I said in the beginning. I said that we will be using our social partner platforms to do this. So we're hoping that in the SALGA offices, in the Department of Employment and Labor, that we will be able to have stable and strong Wi-Fi for hearings to happen in such circumstances. Initially, we prefer that commissioners and interpreters to be sitting at our offices when they do this type of cases so that we can be able to manage these things properly. So since then, from the 18th of May, since we've introduced these web-based processes, we have done 115 hearings in relation to web-based hearings. This shows confidence in this process. But of course, every new process does not come without teething problems. The web-based hearings comes with its own teething problems, and some of which is those that I've already mentioned, where the network will cut, where especially if we will have circumstances where there'll be, running out of data and it hangs and all of that. Those are associated problems that comes with that. But let me give you just a few of those that we had to deal with in that regard. What we're hoping is that if, for example, an employee has a union, that the union will have a Wi-Fi in the offices, then the employee will travel to the union, the representative will be there, and then we'll be able to do these things seamlessly and without having to travel everywhere. And the employer will do the same. That's why we call the new concept we call a traveling commissioner. In some circumstances, the commissioner will go to the workplace where the employer and the employee is, take a recorder, and it goes, it does a case there. So there's no issue of a web-based approach. But it can happen that the commissioner is sitting in our offices, the employer and the employee are sitting at the workplace, and the process runs. We expect that you should have sufficient data, you must have sufficient Wi-Fi or a stable or Wi-Fi to be able to do that. I know that some of our employees and workers who are dismissed will not have that, especially those that are unrepresented. So it becomes difficult to do so. And what we've explained in terms of our guidelines, that the web-based hearing, it is consent-based. At this stage, we're still running on consent. If any one of the parties does not consent, we don't do the web-based process because then it's going to create us problems. Some of these ground-up article that you saw that was published, it was because of those kinds of things where one party says no and we decide not to do the web-based, and then somebody goes to the newspapers that CCMA is delaying justice as a result of not doing that. It's not correct. It depends on this technical aspect for it to be able to operate properly. So some of the reasons that has, where there's been a rejection of this process, where people said, no, we don't give consent. Amongst the reasons is that it's the lack of the facility to connect. That has been a dominant reason that we found why this is not happening. Therefore, people preferring to do the traditional way of the face-to-face. Other reasons is that the union has objected to the online process. Some of the objections, in our view, where there is all resources that are available to do the web-based, there's no reason to say no. You don't have to travel. You are safer from COVID. You don't have to spend money. And everything is at your fingertips. We are bringing the CCMA to you. And this web-based process is intended exactly to do just that. So let's do that and do not withhold your consent unreasonably. Some of the reasons is the reliability of the technology and the volumes. Yes, it is correct. In some cases, you find. That's why when we advised last time, and you will see also in our guidelines, is that when it comes to this web-based process, we've got to be firm on how we're going to deal with the documents and the files that will be used for the process. That is why we make it peremptory that you must have a pre-arbitration process. Then in the pre-arbitration process, you can share information, you've got similar files, you've got minutes of the pre-arbitration. What is left is the matter to run. So that's what some of the problems have been raised there. And also some of them is about not having sufficient data. And we can't punish people because they can't afford the data, because data is quite expensive. And of course, there has been very odd cases where a commissioner also did not want to do the process. That's the complaint that is made. And I've taken a decision that we will investigate to understand under what circumstances did the commissioner refuse to do, especially in circumstances where parties have both agreed that they want to use Microsoft Teams or to do a Zoom, to do a process like that one. Another question that is important to address is how many referrals did we receive in terms of our digital app? Since from the 8th of June, we've received 354 referrals in that. That shows that this is being taken up, and this also includes our enforcement processes, which uses the 718 forms. The other important information that I want to share with you, you may have read in the news also about the Section 189 processes, is that from the 1st of April 2020 up to the 18th of June, we have received a total referral of 18,076 referrals relating to Section 189. And the total number of employees that are affected by those referrals, if you calculate the numbers, it is sitting at 88,498. You will remember that last time when I presented, as at that date when we did the last session of this nature, the total number of persons who were affected then, it was 28,000. But now it has grown to 88,498. And I can assure you that these numbers will grow when we look at these pending dismissals on operational requirements that are coming. Now, as I conclude, right, when we closed the last session, I did make a commitment that the CCMA as an institution, together with its staff, will make a commitment in public and also put it in all our different offices about our commitment to service you and our commitment to service delivery. And we have therefore developed a pledge which we want to read to you for the purpose of record, because you will recall that we have launched our new strategy. And at the heart of our strategy, it is what we call I am because you are. Not only that, the meaning of our strategy is Imfusalelo, which is the revival. This revival also revives our commitment to you as the users of the CCMA. Take it from me. The efforts that we're putting and what we are doing currently, we are gearing for perfection. And this pledge that we make will ensure that during these difficult times of the lockdown, particularly with regards to COVID-19, that while we pursue justice, we will not compromise your health. We will not compromise your safety. Matters may be delayed. Matters may be taking longer. Matters may be rescheduled because we care about your health and safety more than just doing cases. There is no point in us exposing you to health hazards, to COVID-19, just in pursuit of the cases. Now, in order for us, all of us, the governing body, the CCMA, and all our staff, in order for us, therefore, to show you our commitment, we drafted this pledge, which will be displayed in all our platforms, including our offices. Let me read the pledge of the CCMA family. It reads as thus. We remain committed to keeping CCMA employees and its users safe and healthy in all CCMA processes during the COVID-19 pandemic. We remain committed to ensuring excellent service delivery without compromising or risking the health and life of CCMA employees and users. We remain committed in responsible and ethical decision-making, always putting CCMA employees and users first. We remain committed to contributing to all national and international efforts of flattening the COVID-19 curve at work and at home, unquote. That is our pledge that we make as CCMA family to our users. Thank you very much.